baboon. Him and his dancers, yelling, I have no regrets. I do it for the love, the rush, the buzz, the hush. Whatever turns my knees so much to hit the lift. Even if you gotta sift through the shit to get to the twist. The smile high like it's your last line, but you never get another try. Do it right, do it for the ride, for the heat. Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Bob should be on here shortly.
Great, great. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
It is so good to see you. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation.
Not a problem. Well, I see him. There he is.
Hello.
Hello.
There he is. Can you hear us and see us good, buddy?
Yeah, I can see you. My earphone's not working for some reason, but can you hear me okay?
You
Yes.
sound great. First, I want to thank you. You're very accommodating. Whenever I've sent you messages, you're very quick to respond. That's always important. Thank you so much. For accepting this invitation. Ever since spoke with, I've always really wanted to talk to you guys. I've heard your names thrown around so many times, and especially on so many podcasts and so many videos and shows that I've watched. But to have your name spoken by Daniel Falconer the way he did when I interviewed him, just a glowing report of what it's like to be around you guys. But I can see that anyways, in all that I've heard and seen. I didn't need him to tell me that, but it is nice to when someone like that, just the salt of the earth, sings your praises. That's got to feel good.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we've had lots of fun with him.
Well, of course, There's one instance that I've heard you guys mention a couple of times that I would like to compare to something that I witnessed myself. And when I go into my story, you're going to know exactly which component of your guys' experience at Area X that I'm talking about. And that is, there's a private acreage in the Ozark, Missouri, that we call the 400, that we've spent 5 or 6 years at. Well, there was a youngster in this family unit that we were able to capture out in the field as we were walking down a trail. Myself, Shane, and Dan Nedrolo.
Oh,
And
good job. Yeah, we know Dan.
okay, and so on my thermal camera, I saw a heat signature, and it basically looked like my head, just a round, white hot heat signature, just poking up about that far out of the grass, about 100 so some odd feet out to our left, like it was laying in the grass and just looking up through the grass like this, motionless. So I'm watching it with my thermal. And in 2013, I had a previous encounter with a juvenile that I saw a specific behavior. This behavior was where, on a trail, some gentlemen said, "Hey, bring your thermal down here. We're hearing something up here on the up on this ridge above us." So I go down there and I look, and I'm panning this ridge, and I see a round half of a head sticking out from behind a bush, just sitting up on the side of the hillside looking at me. And so this was the first time I saw this behavior. But I said, "You guys go on down the trail. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm just going to stand here and I'm going to watch that until it moves enough that I can identify it." Because, as you know, looking through a thermal, a lot of times if you wait long enough, you can see, oh, that's a deer. Oh, that's when they move into a position where you can identify it. So that's usually what I wait on. I wait till I can identify it. Well, it looked like it was motionless. It was just sitting there doing nothing. And I almost give up on it, thinking it's got to be a rock or something on the side of the hill. But as I'm watching it, I'm thinking it's getting smaller. And that's what it was doing. It took 3 minutes and it was slowly dropping. It almost looked like it wasn't moving until after about a minute, I was like, is it getting smaller? And it was getting smaller. It was slowly moving until it was gone. And that's the moment I said, okay, that's a behavior I can hang my hat on. So that's something I was looking for before. So when we're out at the 400, I saw that head popping up and I start watching it. And it does the same thing where it's slow. And I told Shane and Dan both, I said, that's exactly what I witnessed up at Bennett Springs. So that's when we decided that Shane would walk out on it. As Shane was walking out to it, I could see we had never walked out to one before, but we had Dan Nedrolo with us, and and we were kind of feeling, I don't know, brave, or maybe this opportunity would never happen again. So, and we had Dan with us, being a biologist. So it's now or never was our thought processes, I believe. So Shane goes out there, and as I'm watching its behavior, it changes. As Shane is walking out there towards it, and I'm directing him where to go because I'm the one who sees it, it was completely hiding mode, and then I could see it go like this as Shane is coming towards it. So all of a sudden, its mindset was, I've never had anybody walk towards me before when I was in hiding mode, and Shane is coming right towards it, and I could see its behavior like, okay, what do I do? I could see its thought processes. What do I do? I need to make a decision because he's getting closer. He's getting closer. Do I bolt and run? Do I, whatever? But I could see that it made a conscious decision to go ahead and just lay face down prone and go into still mode. So I know what your behavior that you guys witnessed. You know what I'm going to be talking about.
Yeah.
So Shane goes out there, and I direct him to, because I can see the heat signature. And I said, okay, I said, you're close. I said, Shane, you are right there where he's at. Shane turns on his light, and this thing looks up through the grass blades at him, and he describes its face. It was one of the 5-foot juveniles. And we eventually moved out. A rock almost hit Shane in the leg from the wood line, which turned out to be the other sibling and the mother. They were in the wood line that we didn't know until the next day's investigation. It was a wonderful experience but that specific behavior is exactly what happened with you guys in the logs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and if we know that that's now a general behavior that we can expect, it should change how we look for them when we're doing things. So if you guys would, can you go over that night with how Bob almost thought he was going to trip over a log that turned out to maybe possibly being a Sasquatch?
Sure. So it wasn't at night. It was a daytime. All this happened in the daytime.
It was?
Yeah. And so
Wow.
we had been invited to go to Area X by the NAWAC in 2012. And so they just wanted us to, give us our opinion on what we thought was going on. And the first day was seriously boring. Nothing happened. And then the next day is when all hell broke loose. Essentially, there's 4 cabins there. They all have tin roofs on it. And they were throwing rocks on the roofs. So they throw one over there and we'd go run over there. And then it'd be rock on another one and we go running after that. And so it's just kind of exhausting. This is in May. I'm going to say probably started at 1 o'clock. And by the time all of this is done, it's around 6. But when we're going through all these things, well, I got tired of running around this compound because it's hot in Oklahoma and I just don't care for that very much. And so I said, I'm just going to stand here in front of the main cabin that we were staying in. And I'm just looking around. And there's this place we call it the bottleneck because it's pretty much it obviously was an old driveway that you at one time could drive all the cabins, but it's been long gone for a long time. But this particular area is fairly clear, but has some big bushes. And I don't know what else to call them because they're not a tree, but they weren't like a small bush, but it's a good size bush, like maybe like a willow, but it wasn't a willow. They're running around checking rock throws. And I see one of the branches of this bush had been gently pushed down. Something I could tell behind it was looking at me, but I couldn't tell what it was. And then I watch it get pulled back, just like that, back up. And I'm like, okay, well, there's something over there. And so I didn't want to get anybody alarmed, like, just in case that was really just a bird or something. So when they come back over, so it was 5 of us total, Brian Brown, Mark McClurkin, Bob, myself, and who was the other guy, Bob?
Daryl
Ken
Collier?
Stewart.
No, Ken
No.
Stewart. And Daryl wasn't with us on that trip. But they'd come back and then there, of course there's another rock throw. And I said, why don't you stay here with me and go check out what's over there? And so the other guys heard, and so everybody's over there. Nobody sees anything, rock throw, they run off and go look at it. And then I'll let Bob pick it up from there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and Kathy's right. It was they were making sounds from one end of the compound to the other. I mean, a lot of ruckus, and clearly to attract our attention. And so this area that she's talking about, we had passed by from the north, the east end of the property to the west end. We were going back and forth and through that bottleneck area. And it narrows down, we call it the bottleneck because it narrows down to where there's just a footpath through a lot of, it's been way overgrown for years. And we had been in traversing back and forth trying to chase down all this noise that was going on. We had gone right past this area multiple times. We even stood right next to it and talked and discussed because it was kind of in the center there. And so yeah, when we were actually right before Kathy saw that, there we were at the east end, and we had seen Mark had seen what we think was old, now we think is old gray, a really large gray mass way up on the hillside. And so we were kind of fixated on that. And we were kind of working our way back and kind of hovered there at that point a little bit. And then there was lots more commotion, a lot of commotion to the west. And so that's when Kathy held me up and said, "Well, you just stay right here." And she was next to a little shed that's just on the east side of this cabin that we were staying at. And these cabins, if you guys aren't familiar, are off the grid. There's no electricity, no running water. They are primitive cabins, and have been there for a long time. And she said, she told me what she has seen. And so I went over there, and it's a lot of small trees and bushes and greenbrier all growing up through there. And there was a downed tree. It was obviously a big tree that had stuck out right to the path, and you had to get down through the bottleneck. You had to go around this fallen tree. It had been cut off at the end, so it'd been there a long time. Obviously, big giant dead log. And so I went in there in that brush to try and check out what she had seen. And as you look through, you know how you can look through brush and you can see sometimes out through the other side if it's open. And I'm seeing through sticks and sticks all the way through there. And I can see a little game trail going off from that directly away from her vantage point. And so I didn't see anything over there. Of course, in my mind, I'm looking for Patty standing up, there was no big trees to really hide behind there. And so I'm looking for some big Bigfoot creature. And I don't see anything. And I thought about, there was a little ravine, a little gully, a little ditch, a ditch like where water runs off there. And that fallen tree went across it. And I thought about, I can jump up on this log and I can try and get over to the other side to check it out better. Be a lot easier than going all the way around this big thicket area. And then so I started to do that. And in the process, I'm thinking, this is kind of slick. There's no bark on this tree. Is there anything else I can step on? And I kind of look down in this ditch, and I see a couple other logs down in the ditch. One is the big log that I'm going around is here, and then in the ditch is another one perpendicular to it. But on the other side of the ditch, there was like another log right up against that big fallen tree. And then they were touching all together right there. And I thought, man, I can step on that log, this tree, that log. I can make it over there. And I almost did that. But I thought, I've only been here 2 days. I don't want to go Daniel Boone and fall off and twist an ankle doing something stupid just because I'm too lazy to go around. And I didn't see anything. So except the 2 logs there. And it was later on in the afternoon. The shadows were getting really long by this time, but there was daylight. And so I came back and I told Kathy, I said, sweetie, there's nothing over there but a couple of logs in the ditch there. And there's, of course, I'm justifying it and saying there's a game trail that leads right away from there. And, anything over there could get away. And we were just standing over there and we're going through this thought process. And she normally checks me out on things, and that's why we make a good team, is because we'll tell each other, check me out. That's what she was doing with me. She said, go check this out. I saw this, go check this out. And I look in there and I just see a couple of logs, and but for whatever reason, and of course there's more activity going on the whole time, more banging, and just a lot of banging at this point. And the guys are running back and forth, and then it subsided a little bit. So we went and sat down next to the campfire ring. And Ken Stewart is very good at documentation. So he said, let's come sit over here. Everybody take a breather, and we'll video the interview. He videoed interview each of us as to sort of what all transpired. And so that's when, if you want to take it from here,
Oh,
when
sure.
we were sitting around the campfire.
Yeah, so we're sitting, and it's just a campfire ring. We don't have a fire going or anything because it's not cold or anything. And broad daylight, we're hearing some shuffling noises, and we're like, oh, it's that fox that we've been feeding coming back, to see what food we got or something. And I'm sitting in a way that I'm the only one looking straight down the bottleneck. And Bob's right next to me, and then Brian Brown's next to him. Mark McClurkin sort of has his shoulder to the bottleneck, but Ken's over on this other side doing all the interviews. And there they are. I just see them come out from the bottleneck, and they're on. There's a little creek that runs at the bottom of this hillside, and they're right by that, and by the ditch. So the water's basically flowing in that general area, and they're doing this weird, like we call it the Keystone Cops kind of routine, because there's a big one. It's about 6 foot tall. And then there's a little one that's about half its size, maybe just a little bit bigger. And the little one is clearly trying to get to the shed, trying to get a better look or whatever. And the big one's trying to get the little one to know, let's go up the hill, let's go this direction. And so they keep, he would then turn, hit the big one, and then, it'd be just like this comical kind of like, nobody's in charge here, but the big one's trying to get the little one to do what they want him to do. And so I jump up and I say, there they are. And then I ran at them. And of course, they're going, crazy lady. And right that minute, they turned and went up that hillside like nothing you've ever seen in your life. It was just like they were on, a bungee cord, and they just went right up. And I got there just in time. So I knew I only had like a couple of seconds at best to get as much data as I could in my brain. And so I ignored the little one. I figured I wouldn't be able to see as many details from him. So I just blotted him out of my mind. And I got right behind the big one, and I watched it run up the hillside. And it had tucked its arms real close to its side like a runner, and it was just pumping its arms like this. And it had big, powerful, muscular thighs and butt. So, I mean, it was nothing but muscle. It was just beautiful. And it went phew, right up there. And of course, because I'm a wife, I turned around to Bob and I said, I told you so. I told you they were there. And I didn't mean it literally as I told you they were in those bushes. More or less, it was, I told you they were in the area. And the funny part about all of it is we had a camera we had set up. And if I had just been quiet, like 5 seconds, we would have got him on the camera. But all you got is my butt. So it was quite unfortunate. But that was just the start, of a crazy week. And so the next morning, so we, like he said, Ken wanted to document all this stuff. So he wanted to talk to Bob about what happened just prior to the sighting. So he had taken Bob over to the stuff and filmed, and I'll let him kind of finish it. But when I came out, I was the last one out of the cabin. I could just feel the air was changed. Like instead of being electric with what had happened, it was like this Debbie Downer heaviness. Like there's this big bummer going on. And I go, okay, what's going on? And Brian Brown turns around to me and says, what did Bob tell you was over in those bushes yesterday? And I said, he said, there's nothing over here but a couple of down logs. And Brian goes, guess how many's there now? And I went, dang to the dang, because it's like all these thoughts go through your head of that was our opportunity to, get a specimen or get some DNA or get something, versus my husband could have stepped on that and we all be dead, and so it was this range of emotions that was, toying with your your body of like, I don't know if I should throw up. I don't know if I should cry. I don't know what I should do. But
Wow.
it's since become known as always shoot the logs joke because it was just like the moment. So, but take it, Bob.
Oh yeah, well, Ken had asked me. He just, wanted a little bit more uh, detail, and so he took us over. Him and Brian and I went over there to, and I just sort of reenacted what I was doing, and I said, "Yeah." So then I look inside the bushes here, and I push them aside, and I look down, and I'm looking to see where I put my feet, and I can put a foot on here and one on that log. I look down, and that log I was going to step on. I turned around and I said, "How many logs did I tell you guys were in there?" And I said, "Do me a favor, look in there and count the logs." And they go, "Bob, there's no logs down in that ditch. There's just this big tree." And I go, "No, no, there was 2 logs down there last night." And we're like, "You don't suppose those 2, because the 2 that Kathy first spotted and took off after and chased them up the hill, they probably should be glad she didn't catch them, because she was excited, and she was going at a full blast. This wasn't just like a trot over there. This was like, I'm gonna tackle you. And anyway, so that's when it dawned on us. They looked in there and said, "Yeah," dawned on us, they had been hiding in there, that area, the entire time. We had walked within 10 feet of them multiple times. And so that's what the diversions were for, to try to get them a chance to get out of there. But they didn't. And I think it was that smaller juvenile, younger, it was probably it equated to like a 12 or 13-year-old boy, adolescent human boy, something like that, and was mischievous. And he was the one that they were trying to get, the diversion for, to get out of there, because they got themselves in a spot, that wasn't good for them. And yeah, I don't know what would have happened if I had stepped on them. I often wonder about that,
Well,
whether they would have let me.
I'd like to interject there. All I have to compare with is my own experiences, but there are certain similarities that we have to take into account and say, okay, now we're talking about behaviors that we can count on to be consistent. And for instance, the one at the 400, it never made a noise and tried to be as motionless as possible until Shane was in the standing position with his flashlight on and was trying to step to his left to look at the body. And that's when the one laying on the ground, he was probably within 6 or 7 feet of it at this time. That's when the one on the ground made a noise that Shane could only describe. I didn't hear it. That could only describe as clicking its teeth. And that's the moment the noise from in the wood line off to his left, a rock comes sailing in that almost hit Shane in the leg. And nervously he backed out, and he's like, okay. We were already a nervous wreck. Me and Dan we were going out of we were like, I was explaining the behavior of the little one as Shane was walking out there. I said, slow down. I said, it is looking at you. It is nervous. You can tell. I said, just slow. Our plan was for him to go out there and sit down as close as he could with his back to it. We were going to try to establish some type of communication, but we knew that he couldn't be perceived as a threat. So up until he would be sitting down with his back to him, he's a threat. So, and that's what it seemed to be that the one laying on the ground responded to. And when it clicked its teeth, a rock was thrown that we discovered the next day was the mother. Her 12-inch tracks were found in the wood line. That tells us so many things about behavior, that like they constantly set themselves up in a position to be a diversion if needed. And that's why they happen all the time. And you're almost like, it can't be by happenstance anymore. It's by plan. And isn't that amazing?
They're never by themselves, ever. It's, you think you're looking at a single, you are not. You're seeing just what they want you to see. And if you see them, it's either they've made a huge mistake or it's on purpose. And yeah, and I think that's what that was, is that there's not a lot of women that went into Area X. And if you notice, I kind of have a childlike voice, and I think he was very curious, and I'm not a very tall person either. And so I think the little one was curious as to what I was, or, you know, and there's that random need, I think, for animals for mothers to allow their children to experiment a little bit on these other things you're sharing the woods with. You need to be more wood wise. I'm going to let you do a few little things, like go over to that rock and look at them versus being by my side and looking at them. But I've got your back. I'm going to throw this rock if you indicate to me that you're in danger. And so, and if that, you said that was in Missouri?
Yeah,
So,
southern Missouri, almost to the, yeah.
Same behavior in Oklahoma. I mean, that's got to be a species behavior. That's not something they
Right.
have learned.
Right.
So that is intent. That's part of their DNA.
Well, and there's a component throughout almost all of our stories, and that is the rock throwing. I mean, I'm no expert on anything, but I do like to think that I'm someone who pays attention. And I mean, I think I've come to the conclusion a long time ago that the rock throwing is a form of communication, not a form of get out of here, I'm mad at you, I don't like you. And like you said earlier, throw a rock, we run over here and look at it. Throw a rock over there, we run over. Are they, because they work so hard to get themselves into a hiding position, if they need to get you to move so they can see you better, toss a rock over there, and there you guys go.
Well, and it's because they don't do it just in the daylight. They do it at nighttime. So like when we would go into the cabin at night, the rock throws would continue because they wanted us outside. You know, they can't see what we're doing when we're inside. And so it's you know, I think it is a form of communication, but I think it's also a little bit of entertainment, watching these hairless monkeys running around doing what we want them to do, kind of thing.
Well, that's why it's so hard to when we can correlate from one area to the next. And southern Missouri is very close. It's the same Ouachita mountain range that goes into the Oklahoma there. So it's very, you know, we're all very close anyways. So when you correlate these behaviors, I think, and you being, you know, with your job position as, you know, as preserving the Native American archaeological spots and things like that, plus all your interviews with Native Americans. Now, think of the Europeans walking across the United States in 1820, and every time they would, let's just say, every time they would hear an Indian dialect or an Indian language, Native American language, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of different languages, and even the Native Americans sometimes didn't understand each other. That's how that's we all were raised in the same schools that taught us how to speak and layers of sentences. That's why we're all such good at communicating. But imagine being a wild person, even with our intelligence, we wouldn't necessarily be able to communicate with another tribe of our human 100 miles away, because we just don't speak the same. We've only learned within our little community. The Bigfoots have to be the same way. Just because we have a recording called the Ohio Howl doesn't necessarily mean that the ones in Oklahoma or any group in particular, it means the same thing to each group, because I don't even think they would understand each other.
Well, I don't believe they have language anyway, because we'd have to prove that they have a larynx and all the material that you need biologically to be able to speak. Elicits a reaction. So whatever it is that the howl represents, it's recognized. There's another call that I have called the Tahoe Scream from Lake Tahoe area, that's of a child Bigfoot, a small Bigfoot, and they've used that successfully in Texas. And so I I think there is some commonalities, just us as human beings. Our biology gives us some behaviors because it's, who we are as
Right.
Homo sapien sapien. And I think the same is true. A Bigfoot is a Bigfoot is a Bigfoot. They yell a lot more in California, I've noticed, than in other places. But that's because California in general is a lot noisier than, places in Oklahoma where you're not going to hear anything, but you can, well, in the wilderness, you wouldn't hear a car, but I tell you, you can be in some really remote places late at night and you'll hear a car carry on the air to you, even though the highway 20 miles away, just because it's so loud. So I do think there's a shared behaviors that they all have. And, like chimpanzees, they are chimpanzees, whether they're over in this group or they're over in this group, they have shared behaviors.
So with that in mind, with your view on the language aspect, so what without being disparaging to anyone, uh, Scott Nelson and Ron Moorhead in the Sierra Sounds. So is there a complexity, maybe more of a complex uh, utterances and sounds that they make, even if it's not a language? Could it be a more complex?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've heard several different vocalizations now that same tenor, but not the same, not, I don't want to use the word words, but not the same guttural sound kind of thing. The one in Oklahoma, we had gone to bed. We had a full day of running around. They're throwing rocks still after we're going to sleep. And I woke up at like 5 a.m. to a nice big rock throw and then a wawooga like that, just right outside the cabin door or wall. And so he didn't need to speak for me to understand. I'm aggravated that you're still in the cabin. Get your butt out here in the front where I can see you. I mean, you don't need a language to understand tone,
Right.
that kind of thing. So
Right. Well, there was one instance out at the 400 where we had recently found some fresh new 6-inch tracks. So there was a new youngster in the family, and that was the time we brought a woman out there for the first time. And while she and another lady were using the restroom down the trail next to a creek digging a hole, she saw this black thing running down the dry creek bed from behind our campsite. And so we surmised that we probably have a rambunctious young one with barely 6-inch tracks that still hasn't learned his way around people yet. But within that few days, we caught a vocalization up behind a briar thicket. And I'm going to pull it up right now just so that you can hear it. In the Sierra Sounds, the rapid fire sequence that Scott Nelson claims is from possibly a mother Bigfoot and a youngster that was going back and forth.
mm-hmm.
This is very similar.
That kind of high-pitched monkey sound.
Now, before that sequence, you could hear some chirps and like the big one was building itself up into the little argument that was going on. But we think that it had something to do with that youngster was really getting himself into some precarious situations, letting himself get seen. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. My impression is that she was a older teenager female who was stuck looking after her little brother. And she couldn't care less because when they went up the hill, and I should note that Bob, Mark, and Brian and myself all saw the same thing. Ken was looking somewhere else. We don't know what he was doing. But when they ran up the hill, she didn't even turn back to look if he had also gone up the hill. She just turned and bolted, and he bolted, kind of thing. And so it was kind of like she wasn't willing to sacrifice herself for him. It was just, you got us in this situation, and if something happens to you, oh well. I'll tell mom and dad, how this went down kind of thing. But that was always just my impression as being an anthropologist, that to observe, what it is. Of course, they're not human, we're human, and I'm putting my human emotions on it. But all I can do is report what I saw. And my impression is my own opinion. Whether it's right or wrong, who knows.
So, given your background in anthropology, as you saw this thing skedaddling up that hill, was it all leg power, or was it using its hands to scramble up also?
The one I saw, the big one, only used its legs, and because
Wow.
it's all the power it needed. But Bob saw the little one just a little bit better.
Yeah, I did. Um, like she said, the bigger one ran up on two legs and was out of there immediately. And the smaller one sort of took his time, hesitated a little bit. He didn't want to do it, but he was abandoned at that point. And he went up. It is a very steep hillside, by the way, and we have hiked up that hillside. And as you know, uh, that the terrain there is very rocky and covered with vines and greenbrier and moss and all kinds of stuff. So with the terrain on the hillside sometimes can be very treacherous. Even the
Sure.
flat areas with all the rocks. And it went up it like it was nothing. The bigger one did. Now the smaller one, there was a fallen tree that fell from the top of the hill and was laying going downhill, and the smaller one grabbed a hold of it. It was an older tree trunk that was there. It grabbed a hold of that and ran up it like it was a pipe or something, and it went down. It went up on all fours, and it was helping to pull itself up on that tree trunk. Um, so, it was very fast as well. And all of this was silent, completely silent. And, thinking back, if we'd been ghost hunters out there, you could have just said, hey, that's a ghost, because it was so fast and so quiet that it was ghost-like. But they were very real, and we heard them. That's the reason that Kathy looked over there, is we'd been feeding the fox, throwing scraps from the fire out there, and we thought the fox was coming out to look for a free meal, and we heard it rustling in the leaves, and that's when she looked over there and saw that and saw that run up the hill. So, it like I say, they're very powerful, and I have heard stories, and I'm sure you have too, about people reporting how fast these things are, and that they're running alongside their car, and they're running down the country road, 30, 40 miles an hour. And, I'd always thought, man, I don't know if I can buy that. I don't know. Oh, hello, believer, right here. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, they are that fast. They are that fast. And it's amazing. And it's quite intimidating. Even those smaller ones, and you think, but the recording that is amazing recording. Thanks for sharing that with us. That reminds me of, I used to watch a lot of Tarzan movies when I was a kid growing up. And that does sound chimp-like. I mean, I got to tell you, but, chimps in the Tarzan movies, they would get into scuffles, and they would make a lot of noise, fighting over a piece of food or whatever it was, some little spat they had going on. And they sound a lot like that. So I think if I heard that in the area that you were, that you unless it's a pack of chimpanzees out there fighting over some food, there's not anything else it can be. But I had shared with you real quick. I'm not an anthropologist like Kathy is, and I haven't really studied all of this to in depth like people like Scott Nelson has. But we did a study with the NAWAC, which Kathy and I are both still a member of. And we did a study on sound emissions of potential sound emissions of game cameras to see what it is about game cameras that might keep these things away from them. And is it emitting any sound at all? And so I contacted, just out of the blue, several different universities on the East Coast, and one of them responded to me. University of Commonwealth in Virginia responded to me, the audiology department, and as Dr. Martin Leinert responded, and we were able to send him a game camera to test for infrasound and for ultrasound. Ultrasound is because it's electronic. And he tested in his laboratories, and the model of the Reconyx that we sent him, incidentally, didn't, and it's written up in an article on our website, didn't emit any ultrasound that he could detect. But in the process that, he asked me, he goes, "Oh, okay, I've done all this, or, no problem. Why are you interested in this?" And I told him, and he goes, "Man, why didn't you say that in the first place?" He goes, "I've had experiences out in the Pine Barrens, and I'll tell you," and we had some really good conversations. And he also wrote another article that is on our website about vocalizations of these primates, and how that and he was a PhD, doctor of audiology, and his opinion was that these are emotional responses, and that they're not necessarily, can't rule out that is some type of formed communication or language, but that these are emotional responses, and that the gibberish that you hear is them being very excited, and it's not so much what's being said that communicates, it's how it's being said, and that it is there, and the inflection and the tone and the whole bit. I mean, birds have a form of community. Ravens have. How many different calls do they have? So is that a communication? Is that a language?
Well,
It's open for interpretation.
I just did a video about the eyes, how eyes have evolved, and you've got colorblind people, and you've got so you've got the monochromatic, which is colorblind, and then you've got the diachromatic, which is like us, we see in color, and then you've got tetrachromatic, which is some birds and some fish, some aquatic species that can see electrical and gravitational. That's how birds fly north. They can see. So is there even a chance that they might have a little bit of that type of eye development where they could see an electrical current, possibly, maybe? It's possible.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I mean, without dissecting it, the eyeball. I mean, I guess there's no way to really know, but
yeah, there's no way to know, because we have to have scientific evidence of it. And
right.
So the only way we do that is if we have a specimen that you can dissect and see what are you capable of.
But but the fact is, there are birds and there are some fish and things that can see electrical currents and even gravitational waves. So
it would have to be, is it a biological, an evolutionary advantage for them to have that? And I would say electricity, outside the fact birds need always migrate north, salmon use smell to get back to where they were born.
Yeah.
It would have to be something of a benefit for them. And I don't know, cameras haven't been around long enough for them to have evolved something
for the
to give them
cameras.
an advantage for the cameras. Yeah. So we could speculate all kinds of stuff. And I think it just gets back to all animals know when there's something different in their environment, and so if they see a camera, they know that wasn't there yesterday. And so I'm going to be leery of it.
Yeah. And it probably is the simplest answer is the correct answer. And that is, first of all, a lot of people are misreporting how many times there should be Bigfoot bodies piling up all over the place, because every researcher I know, every time we go out, we see Bigfoots, and there's Bigfoots everywhere.
Mhm.
That's not the case. Many people they come back with not the correct, they want it so bad to be Bigfoot every time they go out. So we're inundated with all of this Bigfoot stuff, and not much of it is true. Uh,
Right. Well, it's hopeful in that sense that,
right,
I heard something hit the roof. It had to be a rock. They don't think it through. What if it's just a hickory nut, or if it's just like
right,
that because they're not. I'm gonna be real gracious here and say, I don't know that everybody's lying. I think they're just misinterpreting or
sure,
wanting something that every little single thing, every snap of a branch is a Bigfoot. And so that's what you're dealing with, is that it's not so much that they're everywhere, it's so much that we want it to be everywhere. But
right, right.
true Bigfoot encounters should be very rare.
Right. And coming from a true professional, that was a very gracious answer. I'm sure people appreciate that. I'm a little more mean in how I say things, but that's that's just my nature. Because I know how difficult it is, and I mean, my God, I've spent so much money chasing this crazy hobby, and spending so much time alone in so many places just for the one opportunity. And it is what it is. I think it's more rare than people think. A lot of people think that they're everywhere, but it certainly is. The area that you guys are at is a great area. I've been in that area for almost since 2003. So one of my main ridges, which I can no longer go to because now they are developing it. They've got it gated off and are putting 5 acre and cabins, and I'm sick to my stomach. I've spent 20 years on the Bucktuclo Ridge where I've got all this evidence and visitations to my base camp and all that stuff. And now that's why I'm kind of positioning myself in different places. But you can be within 20 miles or less or more of where you got, or where Area X is, and still be just as active. Because these things, there's really no limit to the circuit in that area that they'll travel through. And we never know how many different family groups there are and how much of an overlap there is on each family group.
Yeah, and Bob can tell you a little bit about Tag 7. I think you might find that
Oh
very
yeah.
interesting. But just that week we were there, somebody saw Old Gray. So the two that all of us saw. Then Bob later on, like the next day or a couple days later, saw a red colored one that looked like an Irish setter. And then one of our members was bum rushed by two black, say 7-footers, something like that. So that's 6 just in that area. And I had actually forgotten about Old Gray being seen. I didn't realize somebody had seen him. And so that's maybe one of those 6 was female at best. So, who's the troublemakers? Maybe that's what you need is, I don't think Old Gray is entertained very much by us hairless monkeys, but I think there's that age group we're kind of much more interesting than we are dangerous kind of to them. They haven't really learned that process. But as far as range, I think Tag 7 says a lot, and Bob's done quite a bit of work on that.
All right, let's get into Tag 7. Believe me, I've read Michael May's book, and I enjoyed it, but I need to hear it come straight from the horse's mouth.
Mhm. Well, it's Alton Higgins' brainchild, and we have another wildlife biologist works on the East Coast that came up with the idea of this a radio transmitter tag. Now, we had activity all around the area for a while, around the cabin area that we were using as a base camp. And Alton Higgins had set up trying to determine their ingress and egress, how they approached and how they left, and some of their immediate proximity travel corridors, had set up a series of what we call string traps. And they were black sewing thread tied off on one tree and stretch it across an opening, tied off on one side, good and tight, around the other side of this potential travel corridor, just sort of loosely wrap it so that if something went through it, it wouldn't necessarily have to break the thread. It would just pull the thread off the other tree and it would stay attached to one side. And then we could find the string being pushed through, walk through, and which direction it would lay, this direction or that direction. We'd know the travel direction of travel. And we would put them up at about 7-foot level. So that, hogs, and we don't see many hogs in there, although, there's lots more being born every day. Or deer or bear going through there. And that we had determined, some of the best potential areas. And so we got some radio transmitter tags. Now, all of this, again, is available on our website in AWAC, which is woodape.org, and there's tag 7 paper. And everything that we do, we don't charge for. We're completely self-funded. So there's no charge to download the paper or the Wichita Washita Project monograph, which was preceded that. And that's available for download there too. But we have, brain trust of a lot of talented individuals. Mark McClurkin came up with a way to put this radio transmitter tag, which is used for tracking things like this particular model was used for like turtles or maybe birds or something like that. Battery's good for like 9 months. And it has a tiny little antenna wire. It goes out like that. It's about the transmitter tag's about the size of the end of your finger there. And he put it inside of a hollowed out and sterilized cockleburr that you often see tangled up in horses' tails. He would slice it open, clean it out, microwave it so it wouldn't spread, cockleburrs everywhere, and super glued these inside these cockleburrs, which would help hide it, camouflage it, but also would help it attach to, any hair that happened to come in contact with it. And just to make sure it was extra sticky, we put rat trap glue on it and on the outside of the spiny thing so that it would stick to anything. And we employed, I think we had 9 of them out initially, and these things are cheap. And it was tag number 7 that actually came up deployed in a really good spot. This is one of we figured if anything's going to approach the camp from the front, this was right here. But just happened to be tag number 7, and they were all numbered, and they all had their own radio frequency. And you had to have a little telemetry device with a little directional antenna, to track it. And it showed on a graph and with beeps, audible beeps, if you were getting close to the area, and the strength of the beep would tell you about how far away and the direction. So one night the thing got deployed, and it was like 2 a.m. when they noticed that it had been deployed, and they went out there with the radio, and it was not too far away, and they thought, well, let's get geared up, and at first light we're on this thing, right? And so at first light they went out there and tried to find it, and it was gone. We thought we had lost it. It was like, I don't know what happened, got eaten, burned, who knows? It just disappeared. It was completely gone, and it was gone for 2 or 3 months. We had given up all hope of it. And we had done searches on foot, driving the whole area. They got bigger and bigger, ATVs, and it was hopeless. We thought, well, before we give it up, we had a couple of private pilots in the group. Before we give it up, let's get an omnidirectional antenna, put it on a private plane, and fly the area. And they flew the area in concentric circles till finally, right near the end of their scheduled time, they got a hit, and they were able to drop a GPS pin, and it was about 4 or 5 miles away from where it had been deployed. and stayed there fairly consistently in that area, which was not in our area of operation at all. It could have been over in your area for all we know. It was not there. And so we were able to, over the period of the life of the battery, up until about a little over 9 months after it got deployed. And these are deployed on little magnets. There's a little magnet that sticks to the back of it on the string trap. And when it walked through the string trap, it would take the magnet, it got stuck, and the tag got stuck, and it would just, the magnet pulled right off, and that activated the thing. So from that point, it had 9 months, and we tracked it in multiple places. We could never get close to it. We had 2 teams out on ATVs and four-wheel drives and on foot, and had a triangulation and the aircraft overhead at the same time. This thing was way too fast. It could never get within a quarter mile of it. They chased it for a couple of miles. And we could be on one ridge, and we could tell that it was in the bottom of the valley and it was going up the other ridge. Like, what those ridges are like there. In a matter of 10 minutes, it was from the bottom to the top and then over the top. I mean, this is how fast these things are. And agile, just straight beeline too. It's like when we think about these creatures and their abilities, you can't think on human terms. You got to think on a massive, muscular giant that goes anywhere they want to go. Straight up, no problem. Climb that tree, no problem. Don't like it, I'll push it over. They are masters of their terrain completely. And so we were, of course, collecting this data the entire time, and the results of which we published in the Tag 7 paper. And it showed a sort of a circular type pattern to their and I wouldn't call it a migration. I call it a home range. And so their home range is much like bears, and there's been a lot of studies. If you want to get a good idea of home ranges and animals, OSU up in Stillwater has a big bear research program, and it's all published on their website. And it shows the home range. They had tagged lots of bears in Oklahoma and in eastern Oklahoma, and they track them with radio collars. They come back out and they capture them, and they change the batteries, and they do checkups on them and the whole bit. Very active, aggressive program on tracking those bears. And so we had a lot of good data on how to calculate the range. And, female bear may have a range of, let's say, 10 or 12 square miles, and a male bear about twice that. Well, the range in our Tag 7 was twice as much as a male bear. It had like a range that we calculated from the hits that we got. Were actually documented about at least 75 square miles of range. So they have a pretty good size range, and which makes sense, because in our terms, walking over that hill, like, I'm going to take a pack of lunch if I'm going over that hill, no, they're 10 minutes, no big. So, so we got a lot of good data from that, but we did notice some patterns that they had seasonal rotations, and they're basically, like Kathy has always said, they follow the resources, So some over here is good this time of year. Some over here is good that time of year. Go eat some, little yummy varmints over here, and wait a few weeks, and there's a fresh batch over here. They know all of this, and they learn it, of course, from growing up there with their parents. And so, and their family, it's a learned behavior, just like bears. Bears do the same thing. So,
I'm sorry. Even though
Yeah.
that specific area, is pretty desolate as far as people in the area, but not too far out of that area, there's some rural places, and maybe a homestead or a farmstead. So we know enough that they also loot places like they can get some dog food over here. They got some rabbit hutches over here. There's a chicken coop over here. So
Yeah,
part of those rounds are going to those places. And I think I've heard enough reports where I've seen them coming out of, or somebody has seen them coming out of a chicken coop with one chicken. They even know that if they go in and decimate the whole flock of chickens, then that's bad for them because the farmer does something different, puts a different lock on the door, or does something different. But if they go in and take one, it's a source, a resource that never gets depleted, and or whether it be eggs
right.
or one rabbit out of multiple rabbit hutches, if they just come in, take one or two, they can always rely on that source.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, there are food sources, and it's a learned behavior. And it's interesting what you say about some of the property that you used to research and is now becoming unavailable to you due to development. This is something that I like to preach every chance that I get, is that, you know, a lot of people say, well, leave these things alone. They're doing just fine on their own. Well, clearly you are citing an example of how they are losing habitat. This is their, now it's home for people. It was their home. So even there's even a government website that's been up for a long time called Loss of Space, or loss of open space. And they show that there's, in the United States, continental United States, over 6,000 of acres are lost per day, and of open space. And a lot of that open space is through the development that you're talking about. And so there's loss that won't come back for many, many years to come. It won't be open space anymore. But so it decreases the amount of space, but it also, what it does is fragment the space. So now it's like building a freeway through the prairie. You know, now you've got now the buffalo got to cross the freeway, you know. It's like something bad's going to happen. So it's not just the loss of space, it's a loss and fragmentation of habitat that truly puts these things, you know, it was something that you have to think about when you are, you know, researching. And we loved your interview with Daniel Falconer, by the way. You know, he's great friend, and thank you. That was fantastic. But yeah, he was talking about how you know, these things could, you know, become endangered, and the space that's available for them, and the pristine space that we have now, like what we call Area X. And you make a good point. There are other areas, especially in southeast Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, you know, that are pristine wilderness, but they're getting fewer and fewer and smaller. And so it kind of behooves us to, if you're going to be an enthusiast, to do it in a responsible way. And you're a hardcore researcher, and you're doing it in a responsible way. So anybody watching this, I would, you know, really stress and encourage you to follow your type of example, Randy, and how you are responsible in what you do. And I know there are other researchers that aren't quite as responsible in many respects. So, and also, like you said in that interview, be careful what you wish for. If you wish for a Bigfoot encounter, you just might get one. And so be prepared for that. You know,
Well,
and I know
you're super gracious for saying that. Thank you so much.
well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I just didn't want to pass by and not give you credit where, you know, credit is due. So
well, I do want to say, when you were talking about the land being taken over down there, there's probably going to be some dynamic shifts within the cluster of families of the Sasquatch down there within Area X. So keep your eyes open, because of the growth that's taking place right now around Ho Chi Town. They're building a huge casino. I mean, it
yeah.
is
Oh,
gargantuan, and it's in the process of being built now. They are buying land up around. I've seen them on some of those ridges down there building $2 million houses. They are really scarfing up the land, coming in an outward trajectory away from Ho Chi Town. That's going to push more down your way. There's going to be some conflict between uh, limited space. You guys are already talking about how many Sasquatch are in that area that y'all are in. Imagine a couple more families trying to squeeze in down there. You might be able to hear some battles going back and forth up on those ridges of territory disputes.
yeah, that would be very interesting. But I guess it's a little surprising to me that they're building homes in there. I mean, it's like, have you guys been there before? Did you visit the location before you chose to build a house there? Because it's hell, and the roads are hell, the weather's hell. Good luck
Yes.
for that, But yeah, I mean, all animals need space, and then once that space is gone, then they move and they go find space someplace else. And so it'd be
Yeah.
pretty devastating, I think, in general, to the species as a whole, if this is the path we
Yeah.
keep going down. And that's part of our mission is conservancy. We want to conserve the species for the future. And to do that, we all need to, we need that proof. The proof is
Well,
out there somewhere. We just got to find it.
I absolutely agree with you guys. I mean, I know I've kind of gone about this as like a one-man show where I just want to see another one. I want to see another one. I want to have another interaction like this. The one interaction that I had back in 2006 was pretty life-changing, and then a lot of secondary minor like walking out on the juvenile at the 400 location. I keep I just keep wanting more of that kind of stuff, and I think I'm kind of learning in the process because if you're the same person you were 20 years ago, then you've wasted 20 years. So we're all in a process of learning. Some people are running, some people are crawling, some people are different paces in how they're getting there. And I know we're getting close. We're about 15 minutes away from the time limit you guys gave me, but I wanted to say I filled out an application for the organization 10 years ago, never heard anything back. So I don't know. I just thought maybe they were inundated with applications. Uh, I've got a $12,000 thermal drone that has a component to it that is great for daytime. And that is within the field of view. And I've got a huge monitor where you can see it really well and film everything within that field of view of a regular 4K, or you can go 8K video. It'll have a little small screen in the middle of all that that's thermal. So during the day, you can be looking around with a thermal, knowing that at the same time you're taking an 8K daytime video. So if you see something on a thermal hunkered down in a brush pile, know at the same time you're getting an 8K daytime footage in the same, so you can find it on your regular footage. This is where it was in the thermal camera. So let's expand this out and see what was in there or whatever. So the technology is really getting there. I'm giving you guys since I know where the area is and I'm familiar with the whole area, talk to your people, say, hey, if you since you guys may be wanting to move towards trying to get more thermal evidence and maybe a good thermal video and things like that, let me come down there and show you my thermal video or my drone, let you see its capabilities before you purchase one. Maybe you'll want to purchase one like mine. Uh, who knows? Maybe it'll start a friendship where I could go there too. I don't know. But it's one of those things where I'd be game. I'm always game for anything. So, but I do understand the need to as technology increases and they make better stuff. Wouldn't you love to have a drone that has the LiDAR? Wouldn't that be cool?
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, well, we can't, speak, for the board of directors. We're governed, we're a large group and we're governed by a board of directors. And, just like any other group, there are a lot of individuals and a lot of different personalities that you have to deal with. And we try and keep out of the fray of all that. We are
That's smart.
like, way on the edge. You know, I don't even want to be approached by the notion of running for a position on the board of directors, but they're the ones that handle that. So I can safely say, what a bunch of bastards for I'm sorry for not bringing you into the group. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cuss, but wow. Something, a collaboration like that is really what's needed, and not just in our group, but in the Bigfoot community at large. There's a lot of cliquish things going on. There's so many different, levels or fields of thought about what these Bigfoot creatures, beings are, that really, without really knowing exactly what they are, it leaves open to interpretation 1,000 different variations. And in those variations, people group up and, really don't want to interact or intermingle with the other factions or beliefs. And even inside the flesh and blood community, um, there are groups that won't interact with other groups because they want to keep it to themselves. And so they get in a little thing where they're comfortable, and interacting with other groups or other people sometimes can be very uncomfortable to them and humans are like that, for a lot of different reasons. But the collaboration, like you're talking about, that's something essential. Whatever it is that we've been
Yeah.
doing as a whole has not worked.
Well,
I
I
mean,
used to
we're
think
getting there.
when I used to think that, yeah, I mean, they can take care of themselves. You're not going to be able to put a beat on them. They just don't allow you to put a beat on them for very long. So it's going to be very difficult for that process. Doesn't mean I don't I disagree with what needs to be done, especially now that the ridge that I've spent 20 years on has now got cabins on it and I no longer have access to it. And it used to be so primitive. And now the Hochatown is building up like crazy and expanding out away from there, which I can see even within that million acres down there getting increasingly smaller and smaller. So the need to have this thing recognized, if you want to make some changes, then it needs to be made soon, because at some point it's
Yeah.
going to be so overrun down there with buildings that it's going to be crazy.
The window is closing, and in addition to that, Randy, is a lot of that property in southeast Oklahoma is owned by lumber companies, forestry companies. They have vast thousands of acres of land. Now they are in the business of raising trees to make paper products out of, Amazon boxes, whatever it is, the newspaper, whatever it is, that's their business. And they have clear cut, entire swaths of land of what was originally a good habitat for wood apes, nut bearing hardwoods, and that have thriving ecosystems within them. And they replanted them with a fast growing pine tree that really doesn't benefit any animals except for cover. It gives them cover, and that's about it. But it doesn't produce nuts that they can eat, and it doesn't attract the rodents that eat the nuts. And so its entire ecosystems have changed. And they clear cut in other parts of the country, but they're not clear cutting hardwoods. Nut bearing hardwoods like in southeast Oklahoma. You can't can't turn around without seeing some kind of a tree that produces a nut. In those hardwood forests, but not in a pine forest. And there's thousands and thousands of acres. So that's another example of loss. It's a loss of open space, per se, and it's, and now buildings, people, human habitation,
Noise.
yeah,
Crazy teenagers.
Yeah. It's always something,
Well,
but
hey,
yeah.
I'm going to be going back down there to that area that's about a few miles away from Area X. I'm gonna be going back down there in May. So I'm looking forward to that, and I will keep you guys informed, especially if something happens, if
Really?
something exciting happens. Always trying experiments. There's some guys from Canada who's going to send me some game cameras that have a housing that goes up against a tree and it looks like the tree itself. And so I'm gonna be playing with some new ideas and some new things. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh yeah, good luck. I mean, it's always worth trying an experiment. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to do anything. So if it doesn't work, make sure you're keeping a journal and what you did, how you did it. This is what the results are, and just continue to do that. And then you start whittling down what works and what doesn't work, what gets you at least some results, what gets you nothing, And
Right.
so, I'm a scientist, and I like when you're using science to try to prove an animal exists, that's the best way to do it, because then other people take you seriously. They're like, that was very professional. That was very scientific how you did that. You use new technology in a creative way. I just, there are times where I just feel like I have no ability to be creative anymore because I've tried everything and nothing officially works, So, other than just being there, being yourself, and that seems to be something that attracts them. They don't know why we do the things we do. And sometimes I don't know why we do the things that we do, but
Well, I'm always thinking about my next step, and I do think, the way my thermal camera works, it works like a periscope outside of my tent on a stick, and then the monitor is, in the bed of the tent. Uh, so I'm gonna have to steel my nerves, and when there's something going on outside the perimeter of my camp, like rocks being thrown or so, and I'm there by myself, I'm going to have to position my camera. It has like a 17-degree field of view, and know that when I'm walking out there, I'm staying within that field of view of my thermal camera while it's recording, and like go out in my underwear so that you can see that there's no hidden gun, there's no nothing, and sit down with my hands out and try to elicit something where they'll move into the field of view because I'm not a threat. They can
yeah,
see that I'm not a threat.
why not? Why not? That sounds like a very interesting experiment. If you want to be on film in your underwear. I don't personally want to do that.
It'll be thermal. You won't be able to
Yeah,
tell
that's
nothing.
true. But you should have some comfort. And I'm the lady that ran at them, and all they did was run away. They could have turned around and let me hit them straight in the chest and killed me, but they didn't.
Right.
So I don't think you need to worry about that. I think you try some of those passive type research and see what happens. So you get a lot of bug bites. Hopefully a snake doesn't crawl over you. What did you lose doing that? And so that's
Right.
a thoughtful, creative way of maybe approaching this. And who knows what may happen? You don't know. But I recently had a conversation with a person who goes Bigfooting all the time, but doesn't actually want to see a Bigfoot. So I'm not gonna use any names or anything, but it seems odd to me. If you're Bigfooting, don't be afraid. You want to have a sighting, then you have to be open to that experience. And it means unzipping that tent and stepping outside. And, if nothing else, make sure you grab some hair and have it in your hand. And if we find you dead the next morning, at least you've got some proof.
I'm even going to clamping the tent door instead of the zipper because the active that's enough to send something running. So I've got clamps where all I do is quietly, and I have carpet on my floor, so you can't hear me moving. I'm just removing my clamps, and then I can just open the door and be out there. And it's not going to be a long, drawn out zipper going up the whole corner of the
Mhm.
tent. So I'm trying to think things through.
I'm impressed.
I
Good
like
luck.
that.
I do.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. Well, we've reached the time limit that you guys gave me. I'm hoping that maybe someday in the future we can do this again if we both hit new levels in our research. And just know that if you ever if I can ever get out in California, you guys want to spend some time together and play with some of my equipment, I promise you, if you want to see what's going on around you, the thermal drone will allow you to see anything that's happening. We followed a bear that I thought was, and I was hoping it was a Bigfoot, and you could see the footprints being left behind the bear. You could see them on the ground dissipating as it was walking up the mountain, and we thought it was a Bigfoot, and you could see its footprints. It was fantastic, and it turned out to be a bear. But that's how good the thermal drone is.
Oh, cool. That's
Nice.
very cool.
Nice,
Well, you'd
nice.
be welcome anytime if you come out to California.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next time we're down that way, we'll let you know, and
Great.
we'll maybe we can meet up. And
Maybe we could have Daniel come down and we just turn it into a big family reunion.
oh,
That'd be
absolutely,
fun.
he's great. That was the nicest guy again.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, he's just the nicest guy. He lets us put bacon grease on him, tie him to a tree. Just a good sport about
I
everything.
want him to see one. I want him to see one
I do
because
too.
he deserves it.
I agree.
Oh, he's a trooper. Let me tell you something. That guy is a trooper. Don't let his shy demeanor fool you. The guy is an animal. He's right out there. Anytime we heard something going on in Area X, he was like, let's go, and just like, Daniel, you're gonna take a knife or a stick, how about a rock? No, don't need it. This is like, all right, so I'm right
Good for
behind you.
him. Good for
Yeah,
him.
oh yeah, fearless, seriously, fearless.
All right.
Kind of
Well,
crazy.
thank you guys so
Sure.
much for your time and your effort and all of what you put into this. It doesn't go unnoticed. Thank you so much.
Thank
No,
you.
it was a pleasure.
All right.
Yes,
Well,
thank you.
until next
All right.
time.
All right, take care.
Bye.
For the